Hi, everyone, and welcome to our virtual field day, rotational grazing and cover crop integration. My name is Emily, and I'm the engagement coordinator with Farm Folk City Folk. It's really great to see so many familiar faces on the call and obviously a bunch of new ones. So thanks everyone for being here. Before we jump into our program for the evening, we're just going to launch a quick poll for everyone to take. It's only 3 questions, and we really appreciate your feedback. So we're just going to launch it for like a minute, and you can answer those questions.
73% farmers, 20%
Amazing.
agrologists, and 7% other.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I imagine we have people sort of calling in from all over, or is it like
Yeah, totally
yeah,
mixed.
cool.
Yeah.
I love
Vancouver
that.
Island is 37% though. That's
Oh, wow,
good,
nice.
good turnout from the island.
Can you take a
Yeah.
screenshot of that, Steve? Because I
You
can't
can't
see
see it
it now.
either.
Well, because I was playing with the poll earlier, and so now I'm not allowed to see it, I guess.
I took screenshots and texted them.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
We've got
Okay.
this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a few technical difficulties. It wouldn't be a successful Zoom call without it, right? Okay, great. Well, thanks for partaking in that poll. It's always nice to sort of see, the different types of folks who join us, and it's not always a full group of farmers. It's usually a bunch of other people as well. So it's just nice to get an idea of those numbers. Okay, so yeah, just to jump right into it. So we filmed this field day back in July at Fresh Valley Farms, which is located in the Thompson Okanagan region on the traditional unceded territory of 3 interior nations, the Syilx, the Secwepemc, and the Inclapalmec peoples. We also filmed part of this video on the territories of the Comox Nation, also back in July. The sort of the parts with Julia in them that you see was on the island. So and this event is in collaboration. It's a collaborative effort with Farm Folk, City Folk, and Small Scale Meat Producers Association. So if you aren't already familiar with Farm Folk, City Folk, we are BC's oldest and largest food and agriculture nonprofit. And we were established in 1993, so this year's our 30th birthday, very exciting. Our programs seek to connect, empower, and inspire people to strengthen BC's food systems. Julia is going to jump on in just a minute to talk to you about small-scale meat producers, but I just want to give you a little bit more context. So our cover cropping events, which is what this event is a part of, is that cover cropping series. It's part of our climate solutions program, which is our response to the massive potential that agricultural lands have to mitigate climate change through sort of a variety of practices. A lot of those practices that you actually saw come up in the poll. And so our programming aims to engage with various forms or various levels of government to implement climate-friendly policies, work with farmers across BC like yourselves to identify effective climate change mitigation strategies, and of course to empower British Columbians to make climate-friendly food choices. And so I also want to acknowledge that this event is supported by the BC Climate Agri-Solutions Fund, and funding for the BC Climate Agri-Solutions Fund has been provided by Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada through the Agricultural Climate Solutions On-Farm Climate Action Fund. And so tonight, well, as I said previously, my name is Emily, and we are also joined by our engagement manager, Julia Zato, who's going to be kind of just in the background helping out when it's needed. But we're also joined by Julia Smith and Steve Meggait. Julia has been raising a wide range of livestock, including cattle, sheep, poultry, and pigs over the last 12 years. She keeps busy at Blue Sky Ranch, which is also in the Inclapalmec territory. It's near Merritt. Steve is a 4th-generation farmer in Armstrong. He's the owner of Fresh Valley Farms. It's a family-run farm. They do direct marketing business that produces certified organic pasture-raised beef, pork, chicken, and turkey. And Steve manages over 375 acres of croplands and mountainside pasture produces pork from farrow to finish, grass-finished beef from cow calf, and broiler chickens and turkeys.
I think you pulled up an old definition of,
Oh, sorry.
not definition, introduction of from a
Oh.
website or something. Anyhow,
maybe.
we don't do farrow to finish now. We actually buy our
Oh.
piglets, and
Okay.
we buy all of our calves as well. So we're not doing
Okay.
cows either.
Good to know.
So just had to correct that.
That's good to know. You'll also get like a pretty in-depth introduction from Steve in the video, of course. But and just to note, he does all of this with his partner Annelise. So and I'm gonna pass it off to Julia now to just sort of give an intro to small scale meat producers and the work that they're doing.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you for organizing this event so Steve and I could just show up and look shiny. We really appreciate you and Farm Folk City Folk. So I'm here with my small scale meat producers hat on today, officially and literally. I'm a founding member along with Steve. We founded the small scale meat producers in 2018. When a group of us came together, frustrated that we weren't able to scale our businesses due primarily to a lot of processing challenges. And the mission of the Small Scale Meat Producers Association is to build greater stability and growth opportunities for small scale meat producers in British Columbia. We've been doing this exciting grazing programming this year and hope to carry it on in the new year. We traveled all around the province delivering workshops and field days. We have a series of videos that are going to be coming out on the Farmers for Climate Solutions Farm Learning Hub, hopefully this month. I'm just getting the finishing touches on them. So we encourage you to join us. We send out a newsletter every month with really valuable information in it, like events like this, funding opportunities, opportunities to participate in consultations and research and surveys, and member discounts at retailers and all kinds of good stuff like that. I'll just also throw out there that we've just started something called Meetup Mondays, which will be the third Monday of every month at, what time did we say? I think I'd know.
6, I think. Oh, was it 5 or 6? We'll figure it out.
Yeah, find us on socials and I'll send an email out. This is our first one this month. So it'll be kind of an informal like this, where we're going to have an expert or some experts in the field to talk about different topics. And we're kicking it off talking about farm gate licenses this month. So that's kind of who we are and what we're doing grazing related. And on with the show.
So I'm Steve Meggait. I run Fresh Valley Farms here with my partner Annelise. We're farming with my parents who live down the road on another quarter section, and we're currently, if you count that quarter section and ours and the neighboring lease that we just took on with some investors who purchased that, we're farming about 380 acres altogether, but about 100 arable acres, so the rest is mountainside. So we produce beef, pork, chicken, turkey ourselves on the farm. We also purchase some lamb for processing and sale to our customers. So we also have a butcher shop on site and a poultry slaughter operation. So everything we produce, we process here, we inventory it, we stock it here, and we sell it directly to customers. With the exception of we now buy piglets and calves, so we're not in like the breeding end of everything. We try and stay out of that, but everything from the calf or the piglet or the chick to the end consumer, that's all, vertically integrated, I guess you'd say.
I'm Julia Smith. I'm from the beautiful Nicola Valley, where I'm raising a heritage breed of hogs that are critically endangered at our farm up about 3,500 feet above the valley floor. So that's kind of fun and interesting. And I'm the executive director of the Small Scale Meat Producers Association as well. So rotational grazing is what used to happen. Before we domesticated livestock, there was herds of thousands and thousands of bison and elk and other ruminants traveling around on this continent, moving themselves in a pasture rotation, essentially. Lots of animals tightly packed together, eating, moving on, leaving their manure behind, disturbing the ground, introducing, you know, the nutrients back into the soil, and then not coming back until that grass had a chance to regrow. And what we're doing with rotational grazing systems is trying to biomimic these natural systems that worked for thousands and thousands from time immemorial, and that we wrecked. And so what can we take from that? You know, nature knows what it's doing. So we're managing the grazing, mimicking natural systems, feeding the soil, reducing parasite loads because we're not pounding the same area over and over and over again. It's really cool when we start to integrate multi-species in, because even again, you know, the birds are following the bison, and it breaks up the pathogen load. So we're just trying to get back to a natural system in a cultivated, domesticated system. A lot of people are getting more and more interested in rotational grazing these days. There's a lot of good reasons to adopt rotational grazing as part of your management practices. It's better for the animals to keep them moving and, you know, onto fresh pasture every day or 3 times a day or every 2 days, whatever works for your system. It's way better for your soil. Instead of, you know, constantly depleting that soil and needing to replenish those nutrients with chemical fertilizers, or just depleting your soil and having crummy soil, you're using those animals to build soil. The animals are a tool. They're disturbing the soil, they're putting nutrients back into the soil, they're taking that bite of grass, it's sloughing off the roots back in, creating carbon, sequestering carbon in the soil. So it's better for the animals, it's better for your land, it's better for your operations. You're going to get better yields out of those pastures. When we're dealing with really high land values and needing to get more out of smaller spaces, you really want to make sure that you're managing that the best way that you possibly can.
We're about 2 years into really working with the highly diversified cover crops, like the cocktails, they might call it. So last year we ordered some of the Covers & Co. blend. They call it a full season cover crop, where it's designed to not be like your in-between cash crops, but actually to do it for an entire season, and we can get a bunch of feed out of it, or you can decide to plow it in if that's what you think the soil needs, or that's what just works out to be best, or you can just graze it. So it's very adaptable, and that's got 15 different varieties in that one, from everything from warm season to cool season: barley, oats, peas, vetch, cowpeas, soybean. There's actually a non-GMO soybean. Yeah, I mean, I can't think of them all, but a lot of what we're doing is on transitional land still. So we haven't been grazing it as much as we would like to be, but just using it as kind of a repair. I don't want to say damage, but you know what, corn after corn, and using chemical sprays and whatnot. So we're just using it to repair what we consider, you know, dead or less than thriving soils. Over at my dad's place, we have some area that's actually, it's a gravel pit over there. So we have some area that a long time ago we brought in clay backfill and covered over what was just purely gravel, right? So it's subsoil. So we've been experimenting there with cover crops to try and turn what would be subsoil into decent soil, and being able to graze that is really useful, because then we're not just cutting it off. We can actually have the cattle trample that down. And then this year, because we have a no-till drill, we tried not working it up for the first time, and that I think has been structure that's building, and especially in new soils. It's very weedy this year, and that's the weeds doing what they're supposed to do, right? It's bad soil, and they're growing there. So instead of just working it up every time, we were able to till in seed right into that, and hopefully that's, you know, taking advantage of the natural soil building process, right? So a season here, God, it's since the heat dome, I think. And even before that, it's just, there is no regular season. But generally, like we've had the cattle in our feed yards for the winter. So up until generally May, the cattle have, been on hay and silage. And then we usually around May, we just get a flush of growth. So we just get, it grows up above my head in spots. So we get the cattle out as early as we think we can without, it being just a muck hole wherever they go. And then we have to cut as much as we possibly can, because once that grass bolts and it's just stemmy stuff, we have to have that cut so that we keep the grass in a vegetative state. So it starts with generally a lot of hay making or silage making if we don't get the weather. And then we get the cattle rotating on pasture right around that time. I might even decide to do a little bit later next year, but I think May 1st to late May, we're seeding everything that's open. So open, I mean, say we have a hay field that we decide is just too much grass, not enough alfalfa, or just isn't performing for whatever reason. We might plow that up in the spring is what I'm hoping for. We've always done a winter plow, but I'm planning to plow in the spring so that we can just reestablish something right away is kind of my goal now. It's not going to be perfect soil or anything. If we do have to plow, turn it over, work it up and seed it. And that's the only time I want open soil. So a lot of that going on in May. And then cutting as early as we possibly can, which varies drastically. It's from year to year. And then lately it's been irrigating. We have to irrigate in May. It's just weird. We've never had to irrigate. I think my dad said he never had to irrigate a seeding in his career. And he started farming about when I was born. So he's been farming 40 years. So irrigating too. And then once we get our first, around the time that we've got all of our first cut off, we usually have all the cattle over everything we're not going to cut. And then we're doing a whole nother rotation of cattle. Anything we don't graze that time, we can cut and make more second cut premium hay. And then that just sort of continues on the rest of the season. It's just kind of a balancing act of what are we feeding and what are we cutting so that we have some winter feed. And then we just work the chickens. We work into that anywhere, basically. Chickens are at a different speed of rotation. So hopefully we have a robotic chicken barn, and it's supposed to be here in 3 weeks. So we're going to have our chickens in these robotic barns eventually is the goal, so that it's not a high labor thing, and we can really control where they're going, and it's not just kind of this strip of chicken manure down the field and then where they're day ranging around. We'd like to really be more meticulous about where that goes. So these robotic barns we're getting are going to hopefully help. And then we got turkeys, went on pasture today. So we just do one batch of turkeys every year. And we've been in the brooder up until now, and we let them out. And then I got to figure out exactly where they're going from there. I don't think we want them on the same field as the chickens have been on. So we'll have to load them up in a trailer and move them out to whatever pasture we decide is best this season. A condition called blackhead that we're worried about. So it can really take out a flock of turkeys. It's tempting to just let them go out of that brooder, but I think we should move them because we've had already 3 batches of chickens out on that annual seeding out there, and our layers. And then so all along, obviously we're harvesting chickens. It's only a 2-month cycle. Actually, one of the sassos we're raising now will probably be more like 3 months. It's a heritage breed of chicken we're trying out, so we'll have chickens on pasture until sometimes November at the latest. I don't like to, but it just sometimes works out that processing bottlenecks just end up meaning we have to do our last batch of chickens really late or something, or we just have a bad batch during the season. We have to make up for a batch, and we only have so much infrastructure. So yeah, it's not ideal, but we've definitely had chickens on pasture and snow on the ground. and then that's with cattle, it's tricky. Like I said, some years we have lots of feed, and we can actually pull them off pasture when we should, so that they're not eating grass during like the frost, when the plants are going dormant, and it's going to do more damage to their root stockpile, I guess you'd say. So the idea would be to pull them off pasture and then wait for a freeze, like a heavy frost where the plant has gone entirely dormant, and then we can send them back on pasture. But it just it never works that way anymore. We're in a really wet kind of, well, used to be a really wet region, at least when we don't want to be, we are. We have this constant freeze thaw cycle all winter now. It's really hard to get cattle on pasture. Like, I don't talk much about the whole like bale grazing and swath grazing or any of those like season extension stuff here, because I haven't even been able to do it really. Like, we really like the results of bale grazing. We've tried it and we've seen it, just these amazing green patches. I mean, actually back here you can see it's not where we want it, but the corn is patchy because where we planted Jordan's corn, where he planted the corn, I was bale grazing there. I was just kind of feeding on the field. It wasn't a real good job of bale grazing. Then I worked that up and he seeded into it, but as you can see, you got like really well nutrified spots and spots that are not so well nutrified. I would love to be able to do that, and I think we'll get there someday, but it takes just a whole nother level of infrastructure to be able to like have them on pasture, they're eating on pasture, and then oh no, it warms up and we have to get them off, and then we move them back to the yard so that they're not punching up the ground. So that's another someday goal, is to do good bale grazing.
Okay, so thanks all for watching. And we're going to sort of jump right into the Q&A portion of the evening. I think first, before we sort of open it up to questions from everyone, Steve, can you give us an update? Did you get the robotic barns for the chickens?
Yeah, I think we got it 2 or 3 weeks ago. So
Okay.
we finally got it well after our last batch of chickens was in the freezer. So it didn't help much, but it's we decided to get it delivered regardless, because we wanted to be absolutely sure that we had it going into next season, because we didn't want to be in the position again of we had all of our batches planned out for this one size of barn, which is actually smaller than the infrastructure we had. So the whole season just got messed up by not having it. So now we're good to go first thing next year with that. Yeah.
Good, that's great. But you haven't had, so I guess you haven't had much of a chance to really
haven't used it yet. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. And then the other thing I was hoping maybe you could give us a little bit of context into, because you and I had chatted about this in person, and it actually it just didn't quite make the video, was can you talk to us a little bit about your pigs and how like they play into the farm and like the grazing aspect of it? I know when I was there, they were in the forest. So maybe you could just give a little bit of context.
They are generally in the forest now, because I've kind of given up on rotating them on pasture. I've never had enough time to actually do that properly. I actually like the idea of working with these robot chicken housing guys to come up with a good solution for pigs. So maybe we'll try that, like an actually fully automated pig pasturing system or something. But I don't really. What I'm planning to do now is areas where I want to clear land is where the pigs are. So I'm planning to actually cut down those trees and maybe even chip them right there where the pigs are. So I've just got all kinds of mulch there for the pigs to live in, and then spread that out as best I can as I work up those new pastures. So that's about the best I can say is that I've been able to do, and lots of people have done pastured pork. So I think on some of our labeling it says forest pork or something like that. We don't even call it pasture pork anymore.
Great, thanks. Yeah.
We've got a question in the chat about maybe we could kick off with Joanna's asking about hawk or eagle predation issues, Steve.
Yeah, so we do have some. it's pretty minor now. It has been worse in the past. It's gotten a lot better since we stopped composting in piles. We were getting quite a lot more raptors when we were just doing static pile composting, and I could never bury the stuff, the meat scraps and such from the butcher shop. I could never get them buried enough to keep all the birds out. So we went to an in-vessel composter on the farm, and honestly now, like, the worst I get is a few ravens once in a while that have never really stuck around. I don't think I saw any eagles this year, but who knows? Next year could be bad. Like, you never know. But hopefully, once we're into these robotic chicken barns, we won't have that problem because they're fully enclosed.
Great, thanks. I see a hand raised from an iPhone, so maybe that person wants to unmute themselves and ask a question.
I think that's me. Hi. My
Hi.
name's Abby. I work on at Reckle Heritage Farm on Salt Spring, and I work here with my mom and dad. My dad has been doing this for like 30 years, but I've only been here for about 3, so I can't even think of. I have so many questions as far as just an understanding. And I mean, I think a couple of my main questions, I mean, I'm really curious. I know that it's obviously such a there's no answer because it really depends on the health of the land. But I'm wondering about some kind of like general numbers when you say you have 100 acres of arable land, like how many animals that can sustain. And then the other 2 questions I have, one is kind of, if you end up selling hay, like what that means for the land, as far as like if you're taking that away, what you need to give back and what you could do without using synthetic fertilizer to do that. And then just something I've been always really curious about. I thought it was really great in the video, mentioning about the how this just used to be a natural process with wild animals and predators. But I'm definitely just curious, and I don't know if it's too off topic and maybe you don't know, but like, was this what used to be done in farming in just like an intuitive, natural way? Or was it really like we started farming and it was just, it was just the beginning of the end, sort of, in that or was there a level of natural rotational grazing when people started farming? I'm just curious if anyone really knows the history of that. Thanks.
Can I take that, Steve?
Well, yeah, because it's an interesting question. And I think the answer is it has ebbed and flowed throughout history. I think there's some cultures who did lots of controlled grazing, like, especially with sheep. That's the classic sheepdog, is they were herding them all around to the greener pastures, right? But and then with native North Americans, from what I understand, they did all kinds of controlled grazing. I wouldn't say that they weren't necessarily domesticated herds, but they had ways of encouraging their herds to go where they wanted. And I don't know much about it, but what I've learned seems to suggest that they were doing a pretty good job of it before we got here. And your other questions, can you maybe just repeat the first one?
I guess so I guess the 2 questions were what to do if you're selling hay and like how you can not use.
Okay.
And then the other one was just as far as like a general idea of if you have healthy land, like how much, like for someone who wanted to have X amount of cows.
Yeah. So my answer, I am planning to finish out about 100 head of finishers a year. So that's different than if I had cow calf. That's big difference. The cows eat a lot of hay to produce one calf. So I figure, since I'm in a pretty populated area where I have lots of market, that I should not be doing cow calf, because there's lots of places where they have range and they have tons of open area all over the place, and we don't have that. So I figured that by just doing the finishing, we could do about 100 head a year comfortably. But with drought, that was going to be easily doable, and now this year we're super tight for hay. So, and we're not even close to 100. So ask me in a few years. Yeah, the tough question. And then my memory is terrible. Yeah, so nope, the next question.
Yeah, the next question was with the sorry, I should have just done them one at a time. The what is
Yeah, exactly.
it's okay. The selling hay aspect.
Oh yeah, I would just avoid it. That's my solution. I'm sure compost is also a good solution if you have a source of compost to replace that. I wouldn't go the nitrogen route myself, but I can because I'm organic. So, but that's all I can say is I don't sell hay, and if you do need to bring nutrient back in, I've heard great things about like fungal dominant compost, but I don't even use that. So yeah, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else?
Julia, did you have anything you wanted to add to? You had unmuted yourself, so I just wanted to.
Yeah, I was just gonna wait 1 second. Yeah, this one. Okay, sorry. Tristan just got here. We got to get him on the Wi-Fi because he's in a presentation too. For the history question, I love that one because we used to have to do a good job of rotational grazing. And if you look in England, for example, they used to do it, but they did it with stone walls, right? I mean, aren't we lucky we don't have to do it with stone walls anymore? But we had to because we didn't have synthetic fertilizers to prop up our soils. But after the war, we had all this bomb making equipment and chemicals that we didn't know what to do with. And so some smart people decided to turn it into fertilizer and sell it to us and say, hey, look, it's so easy now. All you have to do is this, and we'll just put fuel in these tractors and we'll till up the land and we'll put chemical fertilizers in. And so we kind of got to cheat. But unfortunately, now we're paying the price for that, as we see. But that was sort of the beginning of the end.
So I see a question in the thread here about if the pastures are root bound, does no-till seed drilling work to do, or do you recommend turning the soil over? And we just got our no-till drill like a year ago, so I'm the wrong person to ask about this. I am leaning towards turning it over where I can. And that's, because I've got lots of marginal land, I'm not going to want to turn over some of my land. It just creates a mess. So that's where I think the no-till comes in on that. And that's also where the pigs might come in, where I can't even see getting over it with a disc or something. I might run the pigs through and then I'm going to use the no-till drill. I've got a trailered style drill specifically for that purpose. I can get through some pretty choppy, bumpy land and do those kinds of rough pastures. So, but overall, if I could turn it over, I think that I would at this point, unless I see some really good results in the future. Like I'm still doing lots of little trials here and there to try and establish new populations in existing stands of forage, but yeah, it's really hard. That's my answers. I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm still trying.
There was a question earlier above that one that we might have missed from Pam. Can you use cover cropping to get rid of Scotch thistle and other invasive weeds? While you're thinking about that, I'll mention that Organic BC is doing a webinar on this on January 15th, I believe. So you might want to tune in for that.
I would say you could use well-managed grazing, and cover cropping might work into that. That would be, my approach is to just try to manage the grazing to be hard on those weeds. But it's hard to say if like no tilling or even working it up in those situations. I mean, it all depends on your equipment and what time of year you do it. And just your farming technique. Yeah, hard to say.
Yeah, I'll echo the grazing. I'll drop a link to some interesting research on managing Canada thistle with rotational grazing. It's one of the things we cover in our workshop. If anyone else on this call has any experience, particularly, and this is not just the Julia and Steve show, please feel free to speak up and share. We're all
You
we
can't
can all
still
learn something.
Can you steal Tristan from this other call for a minute?
Yeah, well, I can talk about Tristan's situation. Yeah, Tristan, when he took his place over, he had a field that was absolutely full of Canada thistle. And somebody said to him, well, what are you going to do about that? And he said, well, I guess I'm going to graze it. And he did. And so we took a picture this summer of that same field, and we couldn't find any Canada thistle in the field. And he went back and, of course, found 3. But yeah, the key is kind of you get on it early. When it's still pretty tender. If it does flower, you could go and top it. You can train animals to eat weeds, but if you have the right stocking density, you get a situation where you have enough animals in a small enough paddock where they're not going to be like, oh, I don't know if I want to eat that. I think that thing over there looks better. I'm going to go over there and try that. They're going to be like, oh, I better eat this thing in front of me, or that guy's going to eat it, right? So it's a matter of the timing of getting on the plant at the right time, and then having the right stocking density so that they're not feeling fussy about it. And I'll go find that study and drop a link in the chat.
That's great. Thanks, Julia. And I can also, I do plan to send out an email afterwards, and I usually compile like all of the resources that we talk about. So I'll definitely be sending out like a full email with all of the resources that end up in the chat. So,
and there's some people commenting in the chat here, with some good feedback. This year Paul says we worked 2 pastures that were in rough shape. One we plowed under, and the other we used a no-seed drill. Ask me in a few years what happened. And Joanna says sheep love freshly mown thistle, or at least mine do.
Yeah,
Tracy
sheep
says,
or goats would be a great tool for managing weeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used sheep to manage a lot of weeds this year. And yeah, the trick was just making sure that you had the stocking density right. But I mean, a lot of the times they preferred the weeds over the grass, like more often than not.
And I think it's also, I mean, I realize that some people have major weed issues, but as you shift over to a more, regenerative system, I think you're going to find a lot of these weed pressures just go away on their own, because you're just encouraging plant diversity and the right types of competition and whatnot. And any system can go wrong, for a given reason. But I think where we're seeing the worst weeds are where the previous landowner was spraying every year, and then we took over, and now the weeds just go to town, right? So I think it's just going to take some time to get that balance back and get a handle on those weeds, I hope.
Well, and a lot of weeds really thrive in poor soil conditions, right? So when you improve your soil quality, then you get more beneficial plants moving in.
I wanted to jump back in the text thread to Molly Thurston here. She had a question. Molly, why don't you just unmute and ask your question?
Yeah.
Thanks, you guys.
Molly.
Nice to hear your voices in the middle of dinner. So I'm not going to turn the video on.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, all good. But no, my question was really about seeding rate, Steve, because we're looking at a similar cover crop mix, thinking about the no-till, and just wondering about seed size. I mean, one of the things that the species you.
Well, in my regular drill, the distribution of species was fine. And in the no-till like pastures, there was you would just get one species coming up, because that's all that could compete with the grasses. Usually maybe 2, or 3 in spots, but it's more about the competition than the seeding rate, because we're not spraying it down or anything like that. So yeah, I didn't see any problems with the seed, distribution in that with that drill, like my no-till drill. And then just the regular, where we did plow it up and made a seed bed and then used just an ancient regular grain drill is pretty good distribution all around. And I just went with the recommended seed rate from Covers and Co. So I believe it was around 50 pounds per acre. But that's what someone else I can't remember who, but someone else asked about how I chose my cover crop blends, and that's why I went with a company like Covers and Co. because they have done research on each of these blends. Like they put it together, and year after year they're improving it and doing webinars and research that you can look at on how it performed. And it's not tailored to our area, which is it's unfortunate we don't have somebody around here doing it, but I still liked the work that's gone into getting those ratios of the blends right, because you can really go wrong there if you put like 5% radish in your cover crop. You might end up with something that's not palatable. So I think that it's worth looking at a company that's doing those blends for you, at least at first. And like now I feel confident that I could go back and build out my own blend after 2 seasons of using this tailored blend. But I think it's a really good idea to get the premix to start with. I can't even remember who asked that. But
yeah, no, that's great. I think it was Amber. And actually, maybe while we're on that, we could just I just want to touch on like the second or the first part of her question, which was just around like key initial investments. So like if you're cover cropping for the first time in terms of equipment and stuff, like what does that look like?
It could look like anything. I mean, if you can rough up a pasture or a field with a harrows and broadcast it, I think you could do some level of cover crop integration or annual crop integration. And then if you want to do a full cover crop, like if you are already doing cropping, like grain cropping or corn, I don't think there's much investment. You just buy the seed, right? So it's the same, in terms of that investment, it's the same as any grain crop seeding. And I think in most places you can find a contract farmer or a neighbor farmer to do that for you, I would think. I don't know about Salt Spring Island necessarily, but most places I would just look at hiring all that stuff, getting that done. I wouldn't invest in the equipment if you want to just start it. But,
yeah. Hopefully that answers your question, Amber. And if feel free to unmute yourself and ask follow-up questions if you want.
We've got some more questions in the chat here. Jordan's asking, does anyone know of an economical way to keep goats from damaging trees in a silvopasture rotation? They like to take a little nibble from the bark of each tree, which leads to anthrax. So, fencing's too difficult with pepper spraying trees. Or anybody?
I have a podcast I listened to just today that was all about that. There's a company in the States who's specializing in establishing silvopasture tree plantations in working pastures. And I will drop that podcast in the link. And what I gathered is that he is just using large clear plastic cylinders, pretty much, that go around the tree, but don't block out the light. And then he uses some fiberglass rods to put up fencing around that enclosure. And then generally he's doing the fencing, the trees in lines. So then he just fences down that tree line and does a little loop around each tree. And that's like he's setting up, hundreds and hundreds of trees for people as a business. So I'll share that link to the podcast and you should listen to it.
Does anyone else on the call have any clever goat tips? I know there's some goat raisers in here. Yeah, I'm interested in that too, because
Yeah.
my pigs do a real number on them. Okay,
The Regenerative
Next.
Agriculture Podcast.
there you go.
There was a-
Steve, have you?
Sorry, you go ahead, Julia. I just want to make sure we
I
get
ju-
to the question further up that I think was missed, and I just
Oh,
wanna-
no, go ahead then. I'm just trying to go in order. Go ahead.
Unless so this is a question from Angela, and it's just, do you recommend frost seeding?
I haven't done a whole lot of it, but if I could, I would. It's just logistics, getting on there at the right time for me. Like it seems like the snow melts and then, you know, and then it's melted. So we're not seeing a lot of frost on bare ground. So I always feel like I'm a bit too late to do that. Anybody else have experience with frost seeding here? No.
Only just missing the boat every year. Where are we? Steve, have you had a chance to manage grazing on the multi-species? Have you had to change how you manage grazing on the multi-species in comparison to grazing grass? I'm not.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, on the cover crops. You know, this year the cover crops that we did graze at the end of the season, they were eating that better than the alfalfa grass. Like we went directly from that to the alfalfa grass, and after the freeze, the alfalfa grass blend just went like bitter as heck this year, and they didn't want to eat it. I had to force them to eat it pretty well. I don't know if I wasn't even sure if I should be doing that. But we're in such a feed shortage, I kind of had to. So they just gobbled up every last bite of the cover crop after a freeze. But yeah, so that was great. As far as changing management, I would, when it gets really tall, you're gonna have to, like, because I do strip grazing, so I have to actually move the fence over top of this really like 7 foot tall cover crop in spots. So there's a bit of physics, you know, you got to change how you actually manage that fence itself. But I didn't see any issues with. I've heard you can have issues with nitrate poisoning. I was aware of that as a possibility, but I didn't see that. I think especially with sorghum Sudan after a freeze, something to watch out for. But I was keeping an eye on my animals. They all looked fine, and they had access to all kinds of other things. I think that's in my experience, that seems to help with bloat issues, is if they can access other foods. If they can only eat the one heavy alfalfa and they can't get anything else, then I think maybe it's a little more risky than if they have a big patch of forest that they can get to and browse on a bunch of leafy things and whatnot, and woody grasses, as well as the super lush bloaty stuff. Then they can kind of self-regulate, is my theory. So that would be my only main consideration, is just watch out for nitrate poisoning and bloat if you start grazing that stuff.
Steve, I asked that question. So
yeah,
I was just following up. It's interesting to hear, because I only moved from Ireland about 2 months ago. So it's interesting to hear that you guys are sort of doing the same thing. In Ireland, the multi-species probably over the last 3 years has really taken off, but that was probably the biggest barrier to its uptake, was people moving from a perennial ryegrass grazing system to a multi-species grazing system, and now you have to manage it differently, because seems to be the grass. People are on a rotational grazing system of between 21, 28 days, whereas the multi-species, you just doesn't seem you can do that.
No,
I don't know what you would say. Just takes a total mind shift change.
You're not. I think that you probably wouldn't see the rewards if you were to just let them into a giant paddock, you know, that you're used to doing with just a ryegrass stand or whatever. I really strip graze. Like, I literally will set the fence 3 times a day with these tumble wheels. if I can. So sometimes 4. Like I literally will, give them the smallest set possible because I have pretty small herds, right? So, but even with a large herd, you might want to consider running a long strip and only giving them 6 feet if that's what you're trying to get them to eat, something that's really tall and woody, but it's like actually got some nutrition to it, and you want them to eat as much as possible. If you make it so they can't actually just trample it all down, like physically, by just giving them a small swath, then you're probably going to get more out of that crop than if you just give them a great big patch and let them trample it, right? I imagine that would be a learning thing.
Yeah, so would you say you're grazing it down hard, or
it depends what time of year. Like, sometimes you can't avoid that. Like if you're trying to get them on it pretty early while the plants are small and succulent, it's going to be pretty hard to keep them from just grazing it down hard. But sometimes if they aren't going to eat it all, we smash it down hard. We basically want them to drive it into the soil if I'm not looking for it to come back. It all depends on the time of year and the maturity of the plant, right?
Yep. Okay. Yep. Thank you very much.
Hey, can you tell us how to pronounce your name?
How would you pronounce it first? I get all different variations of this.
Oh, jeez.
I would have just sort of said chain, I guess.
Yeah, is it a ch sound at the beginning?
Everyone thinks it's a ch, but it's a k. It should be a k. So it's Kieran.
Oh,
Kieran. Oh,
Yeah,
of course.
But most people guess Ciaran, but it is Kieran.
Well, welcome to Canada, Kieran.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Does anybody have a follow-up question on that? It's kind of a big topic. Anybody else before we move on to the next question? Going once. You're all so quiet.
Yeah.
I can't see if there's hands up. Emily, are there hands up? I'm just
There are no
looking through
hands
the
up, but
chat.
there's no hands up. So I encourage, it's always nice when people unmute and join the conversation. We're happy to
I have a question.
Oh, amazing.
My name is Natasha. I live on Vancouver Island. I don't have any livestock yet, but I'm hoping to get some. Just establishing pastures now. And my question is about seeding. So I would like to know if the reason people don't talk about just overseeding on a pasture that maybe needs some more diversity, and then harrowing over top of that, as opposed to digging up your whole field or using your fancy seed drill, which I don't have.
Yeah. I've tried it all. Yeah, I've tried everything in terms of overseeding. And the only success I've got that I can say clearly was successful was when I had a stand of alfalfa, like pure alfalfa, and I got tired of trying to crop that. It was too much trouble to try and crop straight alfalfa. So I decided to just overseed that with grass. And I tried a few different methods. One was a packer seeder, like a brilliant. And another, I think I did just broadcast and harrow, and both ways worked well to establish grass. If you have a grass thick sod, like a thatch, I guess you'd call it, already established, it's very hard to get anything to make its way through that, even when you no-till drill it. And you try and get some good seed to soil contact, in my experience. And everybody has different climates, maybe where you are could work. But I haven't seen much results with just broadcasting into grass. Yeah.
And regarding frost seeding, here on the island, we get a lot frost and thaw and then rain on top of that. And it's quite effective for lots of grass seeds, or I've done white clover. So yeah, it depends where you are. And
yeah. When I first got my new pasture over here, we actually went over all with a little broadcaster I built out of a cordless leaf blower, and I just drilled a hole in the top of a cordless leaf blower, and I funneled clover seed into that leaf blower, and I could cover acres and acres just by walking over it. It's great, and we did see some clover come up for sure. That was probably got a bit of frost, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Your question, Natasha. I can try and jump back into the chat here. Where did we go?
I think we got Paul Hurst. Steve, do you make hay out of your cocktail mix of cover crop or just graze it? If you bale it, what does that look like nutrient wise?
It all depends when you cut it, and if it's the first cut or the second cut. I couldn't say. I don't do testing, but I can tell you if you cut it while it's small, you're going to get a really, really high protein, almost dangerously high. And then you let it go really tall, and it's straw. Like I'm forced, I can force them to eat it if I have to, but it's not something the cows dig into. It's literally straw. So, and I intentionally let it get that tall because I wanted to see what some of those species looked like when they matured. But if your goal is to really get some nice feed out of it, you're going to want to cut it right at that premium point where stuff just before stuff starts to really bolt on you and go stemmy. But yeah, it makes beautiful hay dried, or it makes really nice silage, like gorgeous silage. And I was a little worried about not chopping it because of the long stems and everything, because my baler can't chop the hay as I make it, as some balers can chop it up, and then you make your silage out of that chopped bale. But I left it whole, and they ate every last bit of it, even the big sunflower stems, so yeah, it's great.
Awesome. Thanks. So we already got Natasha's question there.
Michelle's got a pro tip for grazing thistle using Fred Provenza speaks to using molasses to influence grazing palatability of thistle for sheep and goat.
Yeah, that's great.
Jordan's asking, with horse grazing, Julia, is there a more scientific way of determining how much sugar, fiber, protein, etc. your horses are eating in a given amount of time on a pasture? Geez, Jordan, I live in the interior now. We don't worry about stuff like that anymore. Jordan's in fancy Southlands. I can't answer that, but I probably can find the answer for you. Oh, you're in Gibson's? I guess so.
That's what he says.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could, send it off for testing, just like you test your hay, I suppose, and then do the math and figure out what size pasture you've got them on. Oh, who would be good to talk to is King Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
He is a horsey agrologist type. So Jordan, I can connect you with King for that. And we get to the end of them?
You did. So does anyone, well, before we sort of resort to the questions that were submitted through Eventbrite, what does anyone want to, does anyone have any questions that they want to unmute and ask, or maybe some just I don't know, some experiences that you had, maybe, yeah, just love to open it up, and if anyone wants to jump in.
I'll throw a question out there that I know people like to talk about. And because we've got an iPhone with a raised hand. Well, I'm going to ask my question anyway. Steve, can you talk about with multi-species integration into your rotation, how you manage that? With chickens or turkeys and cows and well, not pigs so much, but do you have any recommendations for somebody that's wanting to do a multi-species integration with cover cropping and different species in a rotation?
I think, yes, the cover cropping seemed to work really good. It was great for chickens this year. We no-tilled into it, a field that I can't even say what it was supposed to be. I can't remember. I've had so many failed seedings on that one field. I can't remember what I intended in the first place, because we don't have any water on this one field, little pocket of our property. We no-tilled a cover crop into, I don't know, whatever it was, and it didn't do great. But where the chickens went, that cover crop came back like stink. Like it was, I had a chicken, like a swath of chicken manure, and they laid it down on this field, and it would have killed everything. Except then I went over it with a no-till drill and put a cover crop in, and that cover crop, it was the only place in the field that cover crop really thrived. So that would be one of the best ways to integrate like the chicken management into cover cropping. It's hard to manage pastures well for chickens. I've found, like, when you're trying to do the numbers that we're doing, everybody's got a different system of managing poultry on pasture, but what we were doing was not leading to a lot of better pastures. It was taking out a lot of the species I wanted to thrive there. So I think if I didn't have this new option with the robotic barn, I would be looking at putting poultry just on cover crops, likely, because every year you can just reseed that, and you're not looking at trying to just bring back specific, you're not trying to improve pasture, you're just trying to get some feed out of the cover crop. And I think that was one of the best ways we used the cover cropped field, was with poultry. So yeah, that's I don't really have a whole lot of experience with it yet, but that was a win this year.
Is that Natasha? Yeah. iPhone has a question.
Sorry, that might be me again. I don't know how to make my name on my phone. I figure it out. I guess I don't think this has already been talked about. I mean, what exactly are you looking for? Like how many, I know there's different methods of how often you move the animals, but what are you looking for in particular when you're making those choices?
It's usually determined by the season. It's not so much what I'm looking for as where I'm trying to go and how much ground I'm trying to cover, or not cover. So it's really, for me, it's just trying to get the optimum feed value out of my fields. I'm not doing, like, there's lots of people doing grazing where they talk about ways of rejuvenating perennial bunch grasses and such, but I'm on very tame forages. So my goal is, like, I'm taking hayland basically and trying to get as much feed into the cattle without using machines. So in that context, I'm just trying to get the most feed I can out of a lot of these pastures without damaging them. There's a good, you don't want to graze them down too low. Like, there's an optimum, 6 to 10 inches, I think. Does anybody know the exact premium height to graze grass to? It's maybe 10. But
about half.
I guess half is a good rule of thumb if you can leave that much. But really, you're just trying to achieve your goals. Like in my case, it's just trying to fatten cattle. If your main goal is to try to improve a specific pasture, then you're going to think about that specific pasture and how can you improve the health of that, which might mean leaving more behind, right? I can't say, I'm not really the expert in this field though. I just have a bit of experience.
I was just thinking, you've got your fancy robot barns now.
Yeah, well, one.
Any other new and emerging technologies on the horizon that you're excited about for managing your pasture rotations?
Well, we just so happen to both be Gallagher dealers, which is going to be bringing these collars. Well, actually, they actually hang off of the cow. They kind of sit below the cow's neck, and it's actually a shock collar that you'll be able to virtually fence your property. I think it's called the E-Shepherd, and I think it's going to be here in a year. We'll be seeing some kind of like trials. Like the supply chain is fairly limited. So they're sending them to some select large farms. There should be at least one in BC, we hope. And then from there, we'll be able to actually buy and we can sell these collars. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that changes things. Yeah.
Yeah, you can sign up if you're interested on the Gallagher website. I encourage you to do that because they're using that to gauge interest. But yeah, as Steve says, they're going to go the big guys first. Any other technology?
Oh yeah. I use a lot of electric bikes, and we just sort of got connected to the new dealer or Canadian rep for a company called Ubco. I just so happen to have their webpage on my right up here. I'm gonna drop it in the chat? Right awesome. Now, because I honestly think that these electric bikes make grazing just a lot more enjoyable. It turns what could be work into something that's just fun. Oh, this is my cart actually, but I think it'll get you to the right link. And I believe Julian might actually be on this call.
He's been bouncing in and out. I think he's been having trouble, but yeah, it's pretty cool. Steve was playing with those when I was at his farm last, and I know that Julian went up to Tristan's, and they took those bikes all the way up onto Tristan's range, which is no joke. So it's pretty cool. It's kind of an alternative to like an ATV.
Yep.
So if anyone's has any questions, hit Julian up. I'm sure he can drop his email or contact info in the chat there. But yeah, it's a pretty cool tool. You could actually carry a lot of fencing supplies on these bikes too. So if you're looking for a more environmentally friendly solution, and
low maintenance, like those bloody quads and dirt bikes are always needing some kind of fix. These things just go. Just like there's no oiling, no filling up with gas. You just turn it on and go. Even like at -20 when you might not get your quad started. These things you just hop on and never a problem. Yeah.
Steve, there's a question about has anyone used a hazelnut orchard as a pasture? I know you haven't, but he's looking for a recommendation on a perennial cover crop which broilers can graze on in the spring and can be cut to 1 inch for nut harvesting in the fall. Do you have any recommendations for that?
No, I would.
Or anybody else? Anyone else?
I mean, I think
orchard grazing.
Orchard grass. Yeah, that's a good answer. Clover, orchard grass. If you want something more that you might want to reseed, like something that's not gonna last too long. I've been onto this Italian ryegrass is a really adaptable. We used it for overseeding the field that we then strip tilled and then seeded the corn into. And it was great. Like you can cut it a bunch, but it also, if you want to turn it over and then grow another annual crop there, it doesn't seem to establish too hard. I don't know if I don't know much about it actually. It may be a biennial, or it may be a perennial. I should know that. But I know I just have used it in mixed cover crops, and it comes in really fast. and nice. So it might be a good option for that.
I think we're caught up on questions now.
Yeah.
What other?
I don't know. Oh, go ahead.
You go ahead, Steve.
Well, I just see the question. What do you think is the best robotic chicken barn company? I honestly don't know of any others. I mean, I know there's other companies working on it in Europe, and I know that Pasture-Bird is working on like a industrial scale barn. Well, they're building these industrial scale barns in partnership with Purdue Pharma or Purdue whatever company. And he says, I just listened to a podcast with the founder of Pasture-Bird, and he says that they will be bringing those to market eventually. So, but that's like a mass. I think that's like 9,000 square feet or something like that. It's huge. Yeah. Does anybody else know of any other robotic chicken barn companies?
I'm going to jump to the questions that were asked when people registered, because we do have a list of them, and yeah, if no one wants to jump in into the chat or unmute themselves, then maybe I'll just ask a couple here while people are thinking of their next question. So let's just see here. Do you have methods for measuring pasture health and production? Like, what does that look like for you?
No. The answer is basically no. I've given up in the last couple of years of trying to judge like it's also dependent on rainfall. Even though we have some irrigation, it's just also rainfall dependent. Like I can't, so the measurement there you'd have to really compare it to your rainfall for that year, and I just haven't been that organized. So even if I did compare the data, I'd have to overlay the rainfall data as well, and I'm not doing that. And then as far as soil testing, I mean, I haven't done a lot of that either, but my approach going forward is going to be just standardized, like a standard test, because I'm not going to react to a test from that year's test. I'm going to look for trends in multi-year testing. So I think the important thing with soil testing is to just be consistent with it, right? And we're still just working on that. We need more data. There's never enough time.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. What about I don't think that we talked about this, so this might be a good what are some suitable fencing options for rotational grazing, and do you have any specific options for goats and pigs?
Pigs, I definitely know pigs. My favorite way to fence pigs is using those the Gallagher, and everything I use is Gallagher because I get the dealer pricing on Gallagher stuff. So I'm just gonna talk about that. But I use the insulated line posts for corners. So they're these black plastic posts with a fiberglass core that you can drive with a post driver. You can drive it into any ground. Like I swear to God, you can put it in anywhere. You can get these, like they're solid enough to make a corner post for a pig fence, right? So I make my corners out of those fiberglass posts with the plastic core, and then you have a little clip that goes on that plastic post that holds the wire wherever you want it, right? And it can be like anywhere from right at the ground level to the highest 40 inches or whatever. And then we use the ring top posts. It's I like the heavy duty Gallagher ring top posts, and they make ones with a multi-strand now, so you can put as many strands. You can put 10 strands on if you want, but you can move those so easily. They're so much better than a plastic step-in post, those old crappy plastic ones where the clips always break off, and don't bother with those. So that's my favorite system now for pigs. And I've never had goats, so I can't really speak to goats. But the smart fence looks like it works pretty well. Never even used it. Julia, do you have some experience with that?
I can. Yeah. For my pigs, I keep my pigs in the forest. I've cleverly used them to create a fire break. So they go all around our property on the windward side where the fire would be coming from. And so I have more permanent fencing and then multiple pens that I can move them through. So I have wood posts and 4 or 5 strands of high tensile. But I'm starting to replace the wooden line posts and T-posts that I've had with these Gallagher line posts. And like, no joke, like I can pound these things. I pounded them in August at my place, which is like 1,000 feet up above the valley floor on a mountain. And I have had 2 shoulder surgeries on this one, and I'm on the list for shoulder surgery on the next one. So it's really quite something. So, I mean, they're not, Steve's using them on kind of semi-temporary corner situations for his pigs. I wouldn't expect them to work for permanent, but and certainly not like with the high tensile wire. But yeah, for all of the line in between, absolutely amazing. And they have a 10-year warranty, and you can like roll a round bale over top of them.
Yeah, that's nice. But the smart fence is what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
The goats, I think.
Yeah, I use the smart fence also. I've used the smart fence for everything, actually. I have a love-hate relationship with it. I used it for the sheep all summer this year. It's very portable. I can drop a link to that. And we've got videos and demo videos coming up about this technology. But it's 5 strands.
For anybody who's never seen it. Oh, go ahead. Yeah. How does it work?
Well, yeah, go find me a link while I'm yapping and drop it in there so people can see it. So it's basically got 5 strands on a reel, and it's got all the posts built in. And so you drop a post, it's got like kind of like tent pegs for securing it to the ground. And then you just pull and it unwinds, and then you drop another post. And so you can do this, and you can use the tent peg tie outs to make a corner and change of direction. So they're pretty handy. You can put 2 together for larger ones. I think they're particularly great in a situation like what I have is where I've got the perimeter, I've got the high tensile perimeter, and then I can use it to basically create paddocks within the larger field. So you just hook it up to your hot wire on your perimeter fence, and then you can just pull that across. But it's super versatile. Like I used it. I mean, we're really hilly where we are. We're going through brush, and it's definitely not perfect. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it, but it's a pretty handy tool, especially if you aren't going through brush. But yeah, check it out. I think it's about $500, and it's a 362 foot line. So.
And if you can train your goats to like just a 2-strand, the same multi-strand ring top posts might work well too. If you just want to run out 2 lines or even 3 lines of poly wire or turbo wire to divide a pasture, and then it's really quite fast to pick up three lines. Like it's all like if you got used to it, you could almost do it as fast as you could do 1 line. You can get all 3 hooked on to this one. The way they designed it, it's really clever. And you just lean down, you pick up all 3 wires at once, and you put the thing and you step it into the ground, and you got a 3-stand fence post. And I think if you want a cheaper and somewhat cheaper option to do a lot more fencing, I think that would be the way to go.
This is why we do field days. So that like we're sitting here playing charades with fencing recommendations.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do have in our video series that's coming out, we're going to have, there's one on smart fence. Oh, did you talk about tumble wheels?
No.
Talk about tumble wheels.
This isn't like a Gallagher ad. Tumble wheels. Yeah, it's a shame that when you were filming, we weren't using the tumble wheels because those do make for really good aerial shots.
I did. Oh
Um,
yeah, that would have been great.
Yeah, but they're just, well, I'll drop a link. You might as well just look at them like before you.
We got a video coming up for that too. So you'll get to, rather than us trying to describe this badly, you can just watch the videos. And then there's netting, right? Poultry netting, which you can use for a number of different things. Sometimes that's a good alternative for sheep or hogs or chickens, obviously. But that has its own challenges, especially if it's got a lot of grass that can ground out. But we've got some tips in our upcoming video series for dealing with that as well. I mean, if anyone's got any specific fencing questions, just shout them out. Maybe it's just me and Steve and Emily in here now. I don't know. No,
Yeah,
there's still
everybody's
people in
gone.
here.
Everybody's
I was
gone to
gonna,
bed.
I was gonna just like alert us to the time because we should like it's 7:02, and so I'm just trying to be cognizant of time and that maybe we should try and like wrap up the event. And so but that it's nice that you mentioned those videos, because part of what I was hoping we could do is just if you have any specifics that you want to share, Julia, like things coming up, like how can people see these videos? Are you going to be advertising?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to drop a link right now. I should have mentioned this earlier. So SSMPA is an implementing partner with the Farmers for Climate Solutions Farm Resilience Mentorship Program. And now is a great time to hop online and check that out. They have a free advanced rotational grazing program that course you can take online, and also cover cropping and nitrogen management. So I encourage you to go check that out. When we do our field days, we sort of tell people, like, we're going to assume you've done this so that we're not starting from scratch. So that's where you'll be able to find our videos, as well as on our YouTube channel, which is really sucks right now. But yeah, we'll be contributing a lot more content to the Farm Learning Hub. Right now, it's a little kind of cattle focused, and it was developed with the Canadian Forage and Grasslands Association, so there's a little bit of that kind of, not bias, but focus. And so we're trying to bring like the multi-species, smaller scale, diversified farm back to this sort of programming. So watch for lots more relevant info for all of us. And yeah, if you've got any ideas for videos, please hit me up and let me know like what you want to know. We'll give a shout out to an event that we're doing in the Caribou on January 13th. Hopefully we'll start registrations for that in a week or so. So join SSMPA. That's the easiest way to hear about all this stuff. Follow us on social media. That's going to be a good day. And then we'll be having our own conference grazing day event at Steve's place, actually, in February.
Not a conference. It's not a
not
conference.
a conference. Well, I said a conference thing. It's not a conference. It's a thing where we're all going to get together and talk about rotational grazing and climate resilient livestock production. And so I hope a bunch of you can make it out for that in person. We'll try and do some kind of hybrid.
But to actually find out the date, you have to be a member.
Yeah, it's an exclusive club.
It's not members only,
yeah.
but you won't hear about it if you're not a member.
Yeah, what else are we doing, Steve? Is there anything else I should tell people about?
Well, keep an eye on this whole new trailer, slaughter trailer project. That's something that might be of interest to people.
Oh yeah, if there's any food hubby people in here in the room tonight, we're hopefully going to be doing, we've already got one trailer going in the Peace, and another 2 slaughter trailers that'll be going in the Kootenays and one in Spalumcheen, and we're hoping to get some more going in the new year. We're partnering with the Kamloops Food Hub on an funding application right now, And if there's any other regions with active food hubs that might be interested in exploring this, please reach out to me, as we're interested in getting this going in other parts of the province as well. So yeah, come to our thing. We can talk more about
There
slaughter
will be slaughter
trailers.
trailers there. That's the exciting,
Yeah,
one exciting part
we
is that
will, yeah.
we should have actually 2 of them there
Yeah,
potentially. So
and come to our thing on the 18th, where we'll be talking about slaughter trailers and farm gate licensing. So
Awesome.
yeah. Any last
and-
questions?
yeah.
Well, I'll just say, I guess, just from farm folk, we have some upcoming webinars as well in the new year. We're going to be doing a cover cropping webinar that's focused on well, in a vineyard. So if there's if there's any vineyard specific folks in here, maybe that's of interest. We're going to be doing another a more vegetable with the forest bowers. We're going to be doing cover cropping in a vegetable production system, and that'll be in February. And then we're teaming up with small scale meat producers again, and I'm going to be doing first week of March. We're going to be doing a similar webinar to this, but with Michelle Schaefer from Whiskey Creek Ranch. So yeah, so that's exciting. So just sort of keep an eye on farm folk and small scale meat producers. There's going to be lots of awesome events coming up in the next few months. And then I'm also going to be sending out a follow-up email. I'll be sure to include like all of the links that were shared in the chat as well. If there's any additional links, I'll include those there. Just sort of making sure that we can get relevant information to everyone. I'm also going to include a survey and would love if you could fill it out. I know that they can be kind of annoying, but I promise you it's short, and it's super helpful for us to have information about what folks want to be learning about and what folks want to be gathering about. So it's appreciated if you fill that out. And then I think other than that, I just want to extend a big thank you to Steve for being here and also hosting me on his farm over the summer to put this video together. It was really fun to be there, and I certainly learned a lot, and it's nice to have you on this call. And a big thank you to Julia as well for partnering with us on this. It's always like, we've done events before, and it's always nice to work together on these, come together and work together on them. So yeah, I think that's it from me. And unless there's anything else, we can probably say goodnight.
Thank
Well,
you, Emily, for doing all the work.
Same.
And thanks
From
to
here,
everyone
I
who
wanted to
came
say
out.
thank you for putting that video together. It's beautiful. It really, the filming looked great. Yeah, I want to hear it. The sound was a little hard to hear in that version that we heard, but I want to check it out again.
Yeah, you watch it.
And where can people find a link to it if they want to watch that again?
Yeah, so we are going to be putting together, thank you for that. So we are going to be putting together the recording of this, and we'll go online. So I think what we'll do is we'll include, like, I'll put the two together. So it'll be the video that everybody watched and then the recording of like the after the fact, so that it kind of all comes together and makes sense if you're watching it in one go, if you weren't able to make it here. So that will be on our website, probably the BC Climate Agri Solutions website. And then I guess potentially small scale meat producers, if you're interested in posting it, we can sort of talk about what that could, how we can make sure it's in a variety of places, but it'll for sure be on Farm Folks YouTube channel and website. So we can send out an email to everyone once that's ready to go. And yeah. And then, of course, thank you to everyone who, took some time out of their night to attend and ask awesome questions and be a part of the conversation. It's always what makes these events. So thank you for being here.